And so one of the problems with sociology is the data is messy because you can do different kinds of observations, but you'll never capture every single thing that could be affecting a society. But here, all of a sudden, when you look at the massive penetration of social media, you know across age groups, across income groups, across genders, across even whether you're looking at high income countries or low income countries, all of a sudden you have people like recording all kinds of aspects of their literal minute by minute life, right? And so one of the things that we sort of realized was that um, if all of a sudden everybody was recording lots of information about themselves, about every mundane aspect of their lives, and also had a platform that was recording other things about this person's mundane life, whether they knew it or not, um, you might be able to start to get around this sort of data problem that sociology's had for a long time. Because if you can record everything about a society and it's all in one data set, well, then you can actually start to answer these sort of very broad questions, or at least try to stab at an answer, with the caveat of there's always issues with constructs and definitions and all of that. But you can at least start to look at, a problem like extremism, right? A problem like ethnic conflict. Some in live time. One of the things that got really exciting is that you know, if there was an ethnic conflict happening, and this actually eventually did happen, if you look at Myanmar, for example, where in live time, in an ethnic conflict, everything is being recorded. All the propaganda is being recorded. All of the day-to-day lives of each participant is being recorded. Well, if you start to build that data set and you start to then analyze that data set with machine learning, maybe we can integrate advances in data science and machine learning with sociology. And so one of the really cool things, and this is actually why I think the University of Cambridge was so interested and excited by this project, because when I went and I met with some of the department heads who were very excited about it, the proposition was, hey, we're going to collect all this data, but maybe we'll sort of create a new field of research out of it, computational sociology or whatever you want to call it. And for the university, I think that was very exciting. We One of the things that we were proposing was actually just replicating published research, just on a much larger scale. And the thing that's so interesting about what later happened, and with Facebook and the scandal that later happened, and everybody was shocked about all this data use. A lot of it Facebook didn't have a problem with. When the apps were created, on Facebook, they had to go through an internal compliance process on Facebook. So Cambridge Analytica worked with these professors at Cambridge to create these data harvesting apps that would, that people would join, and then it would harvest all of their data and then all of their friends' data, and it would continue to do that as long as they had the app on. That was a functionality that was created by Facebook. There was a request to use it that was sent to Facebook. Facebook then authorized that, and then Cambridge Analytica happened. And so one of the funny things that I find, particularly after the scandal happened and everyone was so shocked about it, is at the time it felt very mundane. I mean, it was like coding some app that harvested some data, submitting it to Facebook, working with some professors, building some machine learning algorithms to like process, granted, a lot of data, but at the time it didn't really feel like it was interesting, and we definitely felt like we were on the cusp of something that could be quite big. Not necessarily big in undermining an election, but big in the sense of potentially like advancing a new academic field. And one of the things that I really sort of learned in the process was I think people who are interested in research, and there's a lot of examples of this throughout history where you had very smart, very interested, and oftentimes well-meaning academics or researchers who ended up constructing either experiments that later on reflection were grossly unethical, or were so interested in their own particular niche fields that they didn't necessarily think about the broader social consequences of how something could be misused. And so, one of the big lessons that I had for me personally, but also I think is a lesson that anybody who works with large large scale data sets needs to sort of really get drilled into them is this is something that is powerful and can be misused. And just because you don't intend to necessarily use it in an unlawful or unethical way doesn't mean that that could not happen in the future. And one of the things that I've been advocating for example, at Congress, and in the United States and in the European Union, is better ethical standards, even a codified ethical standard for people who work in engineering, software engineering, and data science. The way that we were able to go about conducting research would not be allowed in other fields. And actually, more broadly speaking, research that goes on in technology in general, because there are no standards for consumer safety or ethics, a lot of things that go on would not be allowed in other sectors or industries. And one of the big things that I learned from that was we need to think really carefully, even at the onset, about what can go wrong.